Hello everyone, I'm back with another Reddit Addicts episode. If you find my videos entertaining, please kindly subscribe and like them. Thanks to everyone for your suggestions and kind notes. Now, let's get started with today's exciting stories.
My husband, 39M, knows about my 36F, 6-month-long affair but hasn't told me. What can I do? Okay, so maybe let's start out with a little background. My husband and I first met when I was right out of college in a new city. He swept me off my feet, and from our first date it was magic. We married 3 years after that, and now we have an 8-year-old daughter. We both work pretty great jobs, and between caring for our daughter and work responsibility, we are both busy people. But he always made time for me and treated me like royalty, even when I didn't do the same. Around the beginning of 2019, I became familiar with one of my coworkers, Nick. He's about my age and has a wife and 3 kids of his own. Nick and I started so innocent. We would go out to work outings together and sit close by and talk. I started sitting in his lap and we had some light touching, but nothing too severe. I guess he reminded me of when my husband and I were young. There was a passion in Nick's eyes that drew me close to him. Eventually, we started sleeping together. I knew during the whole time it was wrong, but I pushed through, never once thinking about the impact it could have on my husband. This morning started off as usual. My husband gets into the shower before me every day, and I snooze before I have to hop in too. He mentioned last night that he was going to stop by Costco on the way home from work today, so I grabbed my husband's phone so I could add to the shopping list a few things that I wanted. I know my husband's iPhone lock code, so I went into the Notes app to add what I wanted, and when I opened the app, it opened to a folder with dates listed on it. The dates started the first week of March, and continued unabated until last week. I curiously opened one of the dates, and to my shock, it was a diary. I never knew my husband as the type of person to write out his thoughts and emotions. I read through the first couple entries of his diary, and it broke my heart. The diary was all about my infidelity, and how my husband was processing it. Looking at the dates that were listed, he discovered my affair about a month after it became physical. I quickly locked his phone and hid it. When he came out of the shower, I helped him look for the phone I hid. My husband has a work phone and a personal phone, so he was unfazed about not being able to find it. He was on a time crunch and left the house with only his work phone. I called off work and read each diary entry. I feel like I may vomit. Almost each entry for the first 3 months he discovered my affair were about how he planned on making her fall in love with me again. He had detailed in this diary the plans he had to make me forget about Nick. He talked about taking us on a week-long vacation so I couldn't see him, how he bought my favorite flowers and cooked my favorite dish, but I continued to see Nick. As the time went on and I continued to tell lies to my husband, he would write in the diary about how his resolve is beginning to waver, how he is becoming depressed and feels so lonely and unloved. After 3 months, the diary entries became wholly about his depression and how he cries every time he knows I am with Nick. He writes how every night before falling asleep he has visuals of Nick's body on top of mine, and how the visuals make him feel physically ill. He keeps writing in his diary how he doesn't want our daughter to grow up with divorced parents like he did. There is a diary entry from 1 month ago that stopped me in my tracks though. In the entry, my husband talks about how one night when I was with Nick and he put our daughter to bed, he was crying to himself like usual, but the tears stopped flowing. He says that his body finally stopped producing tears for his failed marriage. He says this night was the night the Band-Aid fully came off. In this entry, he talks about how this 6-month-long process felt like a Band-Aid on his soul that was slowly being pulled off. And how now the Band-Aid was finally off, he felt a wave of relief. Like he finally got over me. 2 weeks ago, he had another diary entry. In this one, he talks about how wants to arrange to meet an escort girl. He writes that he doesn't know how to start an affair, but having sex with someone other than his wife will be an interesting experience. My husband knows my cheating schedule. He has planned on meeting this escort sometime that I am with Nick. I don't know what to do at this point. I am at such a loss. I am so ashamed in myself. I kept telling myself that no one was getting hurt, that this affair would run its course and life would go back to normal. I never realized the pain and suffering that I put my husband through. I have cheated on him so many times, and he suffered through it. What can I do now? I am never going to cheat on my husband again, but it's probably too late to have this realization for me. Where do I go? What can I do? I know many of you will say some horrible things about me, and that's okay, but please help me save the marriage I ruined. Story 2. Me, 36F, with my husband, 39M, need help after an affair. Hello, I'm reaching out to you all as I have been reading this forum for a few days and hope you can provide some much-needed advice. Both my husband and I are in our 30s and married for almost 8 years. We have no kids together. Here's the background story. A couple of years ago, due to his work, my husband was away for a few months, and during that time I developed a romantic relationship with a man who was up until that point a friend. During that time I was intimate with this man, and even brought him home as well. When my husband returned home, there was an opportunity for us to relocate to another city, and at that moment, though I had an option to relocate by myself to a different part of the country, I made the conscious decision to follow him and hopefully be able to put it all behind. A few months went by and we had a weekend trip planned to go back to the city where I had the affair. I arrived a couple of days before he did, and one night out with friends, I met with the man I had an affair with, was extremely weak and was intimate with him one last time. This time, this was purely sex, and in my head, I was still only emotionally invested in my husband. My husband had a strong suspicion about this and confronted me with the question. At that moment, I really wanted to spare him the pain and thought it would be best to deny everything. Again, and I know what most of you are thinking, I considered this last incident as a relapse, but knew who I wanted to be with and didn't want to lose my life partner. At this point, I stopped all contact with the other man and blocked his number on my cell phone. However, after a few months, he reached out to me via social media. We weren't connected on social media before this point, and told me he was diagnosed with cancer and was going through a rough time. At the beginning, I ignored his messages, but at one point, and I know I shouldn't have, felt terrible for his situation and started talking to him again strictly as a friend to try and help him through the situation. At present, we're looking at a timeline of almost 2 years since the beginning of the 4-month affair. Over a year since our last sexual encounter, and maybe 6 months since I learned about his illness. A month ago, while preparing to move back to the city where it all started, my husband was already there and I was in the other city taking care of the move. One of my last days at work, my phone started blowing up. It was my husband, who, I don't know how, had read all the Facebook messages I had received from this other man and realized about the affair. The other man mentions understanding my choice to move on with my husband despite him wanting a life together with me. I've since moved back to the city where my husband is. Luckily our rental apartment has 2 bedrooms, so we agreed to each take our own. He told me he doesn't think being able to move past this and is seriously considering divorce, but we also both agreed to first take care of our finances and be able to make this as amicable as possible. What truly devastates me is knowing I brought him so much pain during a stressful time in his life on the work front. I don't know what to do to help him. He has been avoiding me like a plague, which I understand, and have been trying to give him space. He has gone through great lengths to not see me at home. He goes out to dinner until late, so he makes sure I am already sleeping when he comes home, and over the weekends he just disappears for hours at the time. I am constantly worried about him and think something could happen to him, and I wouldn't know it because I am trying to give him the space he needs and not ask where he is. Every day I stop myself from texting him to see how he's doing, so the last couple of days I left him 2 letters on his nightstand to hopefully be able to open up the communication between us. I would like to at least be able to take some of that pain away from him, give him an output for his anger/rage/sadness, whatever it may be. It is unfair for him to be in this situation because I put him there, and I feel horrible that there is not much I can do right now to help in any way possible. Please, help me. I need to understand how to approach him. Though I hope that with time we may be able to push through and come out on the other side in our relationship, I respect his current course of action, and my ultimate goal right now is to make this at least a bit easier on him. What advice would you be able to provide me at this time? TLDR, had an affair and crush on another man and want to know how to sort this mess out.
We hope you enjoyed this story. Thanks for watching and hope to see you in the next video. And before you go, please be sure to subscribe for more.